Books on Tape presents Sailing the Wine-Dark Sea, Why the Greeks Matter, by Thomas Cahill. Read by John Lee. Introduction. The Way They Came. Demeter's hair was yellow as the ripe corn of which she was mistress, for she was the harvest spirit, goddess of farmed fields and growing grain. The threshing floor was her sacred space. Women, the world's first farmers, while men still ran off to the bloody howling of hunt and battle, were her natural worshippers, praying, "May it be our part to separate wheat from chaff in a rush of wind," digging the great winnowing fan through Demeter's heaped-up mounds of corn, while she stands among us smiling, her brown arms heavy with sheaves, her ample breasts adorned in flowers of the field. Demeter had but one daughter, and she needed no other, for Persephone was the spirit of spring. The lord of shadows and death, Hades himself, the unseen one, carried her off in his jet-black chariot, driven by coal-black steeds, through a crevice in the surface of earth, down to the realms of the dead. For 9 days Demeter wandered sorrowing over land, sea, and sky in search of her daughter, but no one dared tell her what had happened till she reached the sun, who had seen it all. With Zeus's help, the mother retrieved her daughter, but Persephone had already eaten a pomegranate seed, food of the dead, at Hades' insistence, which meant she must come back to him. In the end, a sort of truce was arranged. Persephone could return to her sorrowing mother, but must spend a third of each year with her dark lord. Thus, by the 4-month death each year of the goddess of springtime in her descent to the underworld, did winter enter the world. And when she returns from the dark realms, she always strikes earthly beings with awe, and smells somewhat of the grave. History must be learned in pieces. This is partly because we have only pieces of the past. Shards, ostraka, palimpsests, crumbling codices with missing pages, newsreel clips, snatches of song, faces of idols whose bodies have long since turned to dust, which give us glimpses of what has been but never the whole reality. How could they? We cannot encompass the whole reality even of the times in which we live. Human beings never know more than part, as through a glass darkly, and all knowledge comes to us in pieces. That said, it is often easier to encompass the past than the present, for it is past, and its pieces may be set beside one another, examined, contrasted and compared, till one attains an overview. Like fish who do not know they swim in water, we are seldom aware of the atmosphere of the times through which we move, how strange and singular they are. But when we approach another age, its alienness stands out for us, almost as if that were its most obvious quality, and the sense of being on alien ground grows with the antiquity of the age we are considering. I first came in contact with people of another time and place in the sayings, stories, and songs my mother taught me when I was little. These were pieces of an oral tradition, passed on to her by her mother, who died before I was born, a countrywoman from the Galway Midlands. So many of the words were strange to someone growing up in 20th century New York City. "When you've harrowed as much as I've ploughed, then you'll know something. You never know who'll take the coal off your foot when it's burning you. Every old shoe finds an old sock." I had been to a farm once, but had never seen harrow or plough in use. I knew what coal was, but had never been warmed at an open coal fire. I surely knew what shoes and socks were, but nothing of the archaic courting practices in the Irish countryside. My mother explained patiently that this last was meant as a hilarious send-up of old maids and their prospects. The sexual aspect of the imagery she doubtlessly left me to work out for myself. But her waves of words had a sort of triple and simultaneous effect. First, the experience of coming into contact with alien lives through the medium of the words they had left behind. Then, an acknowledgement of the humanity I shared with these strangers from another time and place. And last, the satisfying thrill that concentrated metaphorical language can give its listener, the electric sensation at the back of the neck announcing the arrival of the gods of poetry. It is through such wisps of words and such tantalizingly incomplete images that we touch the past and its peoples. When I attended a Jesuit high school in New York City and was taught to read Latin and ancient Greek, I had my first scholarly taste of the strangeness of other ages. In Homer's gods and heroes and in Ovid's metamorphoses, I discovered the fleeting reflections of what was once a complete world. Odysseus, putting out the giant's single eye, enormous in his forehead and balefully glistening. Niobe's many children struck dead one at a time by the arrows of Apollo and Artemis, as Niobe stood by helpless in mounting hysteria, finally consumed by insensate despair. Nothing like their plights had ever happened, or would ever happen to me. I would never encounter a Cyclops or be hunted by Apollo, but I could nonetheless feel as their victims felt. I could take on Odysseus's twitching anxiety in the face of an unbeatable enemy and the hopelessness of terminal captivity in the service of a monster, even if I had as yet but scant experience of being someone's employee. I could resonate with Niobe's heart-sickness, fevered attempts to protect her children and catatonic despair. I, too, had known impossible opponents. I, too, understood how much a mother loved her children. Just around the corner from my school was the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which I discovered without the help of the Jesuits, who were verbal but not visual. There, in the old gallery of classical art, I first saw the faint traces of paint on the classical marble statuary, and learned that the eyeless bronzes had once been fitted with lifelike irises. There I saw an accurate model of the Parthenon, with its excited and boldly coloured frieze of gods and heroes. I came to understand that ancient Greece had not been a collection of tasteful white marble statues, but a place on fire with colour. I made the connection between these astonishing figures that now lived along Fifth Avenue and the brilliant colours of Homer's metaphors, the wine-dark sea, the rosy-fingered dawn. I had, without knowing it, put the literature in a context. I tell you these things now because my methods of approaching the past have scarcely changed since childhood and adolescence. I assemble what pieces there are, contrast and compare, and try to remain in their presence till I can begin to see and hear and love what living men and women once saw and heard and loved, till from these scraps and fragments living men and women begin to emerge and move and live again, and then I try to communicate these sensations to my reader. So you will find in this book no breakthrough discoveries, no cutting-edge scholarship, just, if I have succeeded, the feelings and perceptions of another age, and, insofar as possible, real and rounded men and women. For me, the historian's principal task should be to raise the dead to life. To keep a sense of how fragmented are the materials we are dealing with, I have set a story at the head of each chapter, such as the story of Demeter, with which this introduction began. These fragments, which we usually call myths, are pieces of the elaborate mythology of the Greeks, a mythology woven from many sources over the course of Greece's largely unknowable prehistory, and with many adumbrations of sights and sounds, still to be found faintly in our own world. In Demeter's story, for instance, the attentive reader may catch dark prefigurings of the Christian Mother of Sorrows and the novenas, penitential 9-day cycles, commemorating her pain at the loss of her magical child, who rises from the grave in late March or early April. These fragments also give the reader another way of approaching the material in the body of the chapter, another dark glass to look through. At times, however, the fragments I lay out for your inspection may seem not to fit well together, as if they were stray pieces from separate puzzles. In such cases, I would counsel patience. There are moments when a large enough fragment can become a low wall, a second fragment another wall to be raised at right angles to the first. A few struts and beams later, and we may have made ourselves a rough lean-to in which to take momentary shelter from the contrary buffetings of raw history. But it can consume the better part of a chapter to build such a lean-to, and as we do so the fragment we are examining may seem unconnected to the larger whole. Only when we step back can we see that we have been reassembling something that can stand in the wind. Their origins lie in mystery. Who the Greeks were to begin with and where they came from.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?